From 0 to 6, you're a caretaker. From 6 to 12, you're a cop. Right and wrong, put them in jail, doing, punishment. From 12 to 18, you're a coach, coaching from the sidelines. And from 18 on, you're a consultant, only engaged when called.
My friend, you do not hear this enough. You being a father is one of the most important callings on your life. We need you. We need you to step into your role. And as you will even hear on this podcast conversation, being a father is a critical component to the success of our world. You are desperately needed. 3 nuggets from my conversation with Dale today are: 1, the importance of teaching your kids about money. 2, how to become a trusted advisor to your kids even after they move out. And that starts now. And number 3 is a decision your kids must make that is more important than who their spouse will be. Welcome to Fatherhood Field Notes podcast, where I interview truly incredible, remarkable, amazing fathers, gaining wisdom from their stories for both you and I to grow in our craft. I'm your guide, Ned Shout, father to 5 kiddos, currently ages 11 to 18, and husband to my rad wife, Sarah, working on our 21st year of marriage. So yeah, I'm in the thick of it, and I am working daily to rebel against the low expectations for fathers and create a world where fathers know who they are as they show up for their families. You and I have the greatest opportunity to impact our world through the way we embrace our fatherhood role. This episode is brought to you by the Adventure of Fatherhood, helping men discover their powerful fatherhood role and build their fatherhood skills. The role of the father is to serve, guide, steward, protect, and of course, find joy and have fun in the messiness of it all. Today's guest is my new friend, Dale Alexander, and we had an incredible conversation around legacy, around money, and around how to teach our kids about money. Enjoy meeting my friend, Dale. All right. So actually, before I'll cut this part out later. When I say goodbye at the end, don't hang up because it'll take a minute for it to upload. Okay, cool. All right, my friends, welcome to Fatherhood Field Notes. I am already smiling ear to ear, stoked to be connecting with a new friend, Dale Alexander. Dale, welcome to the podcast. How you feeling today?
Appreciate it, man. It's so awesome. Thanks for having me. Excited. We're headed down from Atlanta to our house in Jacksonville Beach to see our kids and spend time at the beach with them. So going to do some dad stuff down here. Excited. Glad to be with you.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I see the car's full of supplies for your trip.
And a dog. And a dog right there.
And a dog. Nice. How old do you find yourself today, Dale?
So I'm 60 years old and a young 60. It's amazing how fast it went, Ned. Our kids are 26, 24, 22. The girl's 26. A boy 22 and a boy 24 and a boy 22. He's finishing his last year in college, and the other 2 are out, and they're all probably going to wind up in Jacksonville Beach with us down there.
Love it. And how many years you been married?
We have been married this year in September, coming up. Next week will be 28 years. 28 years.
28 years.
Yes.
Incredible. I think that's one of the greatest gifts you can give the world is a long marriage, right? It's that consistency. What would you tell the guy so I just celebrated 20 years, right? 20 years. And it's kind of interesting. Okay. So you're ahead. So my oldest is 18. We just took her to college. My youngest is 11. And we're in this new spot where the kids don't quite need us as much, which is great. And also has the last year caused more tension with my wife and I, because now there's space to maybe work through some of the whatever stuff. Sure. And so if you could think back to that season of transition, 10 years ago, what would you say helped get you from that 20 years to now almost 28 years? Is there anything you'd speak into that guy?
I took my daughter to a Christian outdoor Christian camp. It was a dad-daughter week in Northern California, Etna, California, way up on the state line years ago, back in 2010. She was 12, And they said this: from 0 to 6, you're a caretaker. From 6 to 12, you're a cop. Right and wrong, put them in jail, doing, punishment. From 12 to 18, you're a coach, coaching from the sidelines. And from 18 on, you're a consultant, only engaged when called. From 0 to 6, you're a caretaker. 6 to 12, you're a cop. 12 to 18, you're a coach from the sidelines. And 18 plus, you're a consultant, only engaged when called. And to answer your question, they did one of the most powerful exercises I've ever been a part of. Let me explain it to you. It's a very rugged, rocky path in this camp in Northern California, JH Ranch, by the way, this camp in Northern California. And they made the dads blindfold our daughters. And they said, for the first third of the trail, you can touch your daughters, talk to them, move them around, and get them through the trail. They're blindfolded. And when we start, tell your daughter, just talk to me. Just talk to me. That's the only thing you can say, just talk to me. So the first, you can touch them, you have cut up with them. The middle third, you can only talk to them. You can't touch them, you can only talk to them. They're blindfolded, you can only talk to them. And the last third, you can't touch them and you can't talk to them unless they ask you a question. And for the first third, it was spent as a guide there with you, kind of leading us. And it's fun and it's goofy and you're moving your daughter blindfolded through this rugged trail. And then the middle third, it started getting serious because you could only talk to them. You couldn't touch them. And they're hitting leaves and stuff. And the guy starts messing with them. And I could see where this was going. He starts hitting them with sticks and stuff, and they start getting a little agitated. And then the last third, and I knew what was going to happen, the last third, you couldn't talk to them and you couldn't touch them unless they engaged you. And he really ramped up messing with our daughters. And they started getting mad. One girl started crying and threw her towel. I remember her father running after her. And they start screaming at us. Who loves you more than your father? And what did that guide represent? He represented peer pressure. He represented society. He represented media. He represented song lyrics, right? And he's trying to take our daughter. He's going, don't send her that way. Why are you sending her? And they're screaming at us, their fathers. Who loves a daughter more than their father? And so I told you, just talk to the father, to your father. And in a way, it was a parallel about life. And we should just talk to the father. And our daughters, he's trying to take our daughters off this path. Just come back to your thing. Start early. Start leading your children early. Start walking with them. Start talking to them. So when they get that 18 plus and you're a consultant, they want to call you. They want you to lead them down that path because they know he's lying to them. They know the world is lying to them. And they know who loves them more than their father and really their ultimate father.
Yeah, beautiful. So it's creating a communication with your kids and starting early so that when you get through those different stages, they trust to turn to you. And I do really like the be the consultant when called on, right? And I think that's probably where a lot of us mess it up is we want to give our input when it's not requested. And I think, so what's your opinion on standing on the side and watching your kid fail?
I mean, it's isn't that one of the greatest strengths we can give them is to, I always love to let them fail early. As an example, we got our kid a little Honda motorcycle when he was 4 or 5 years old, and it was the little kind that you could throttle down the throttle with a screw where they can only go about 5 miles an hour. And my wife and I kind of debated about getting that. And I said, I'd rather him hit a tree at 6 miles an hour than hit a tree when he's 17 at 60 miles an hour. Put the fear of God in it to him early and let him fail early and fail often. So a big proponent of that.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good.
A good friend of mine said, prepare the child for the path, not the path for the child.
It's good. So I want to ask a more marriage-based question for a minute. So you're celebrating 28 years of marriage coming up here. What would you go tell yourself or tell me? I'm celebrating 20 years. Like, how do I get to that next decade, right? Like you've gone to that next decade of celebration almost. What are the things that you'd say lean into as your kids are transitioning out of, almost empty nester and stuff? So how do you lean into your marriage and make sure that that is a strong component? Because that's such a huge example to your adult children of what your marriage looks like.
Get around other great couples that are modeling what you want to model in your own marriage. Have people around in all phases of our life. Have people around you physically that you want to be like, have people around you financially, having inspirations in our life, but be around people that are modeling. I always tell people, poor people should take rich people to lunch. This has nothing to do with money, by the way. Poor people should take rich people to lunch. There may be people that are rich in things that I want to be better at, rich in a spiritual life, rich in a marriage, rich in how they parent, rich in how they handle finances, and they are richer in that area of my life. And I should be taking them and asking them, what do they do? How do you do that? Go to couples retreats. Get some couples retreats that you can go be around other great couples. And we've got one that's early in the year. I love that because we start off the year around other great couples, and we do this every year, and you get things to work through, and it kind of keeps your thoughts on a great marriage all of your life. But the second thing is just shut up and listen to our wives, because they're usually right, not us.
So then another question for you is, I think some men stop being themselves when they get married, or through time, they just stop being themselves. And I was just on your Instagram, which we'll talk about, but you're 60 and you're still doing a handstand on a skateboard, for a good 20 yards at least. And it looks like you could have gone longer if probably your blood rushing to your head. So how do you hang on to those things that matter to you while also, trying to be a good husband and father?
Well, first of all, you can't not be you. If you are, it's just not going to last. It's just not going to last. You've got to remain you for them, right?
Yes,
I love that. The speaker was. It said, "I'll take care of me for you, and you take care of you for me." I want to stay young as late in life as possible. So if you aren't you, you're not you for them. I don't even think about that. I'm not going to not be me. I'm not going to not do the things that make me me. But at the same time, you have to think of how that impacts your wife. I've never been one to care about just leaving and all day and going to play golf or going to do some sport like offshore fishing. I've always wanted to go to my work and do my job and just go home and be with my family. That was just me. But if I was the kind that would want to go do some sport that took me away all day, I do need to think about how is that impacting my family? Because there are seasons, Ned, in our lives. There are seasons. And maybe for a season in your kids' lives, you just take a step back just for a season. Doesn't mean forever, but maybe for a season, we change what we're doing.
That's good. So with that in mind, what would you say the role of the father is?
My goal has always been to raise passionate pursuers of Christ-centered personal growth. Passionate pursuers of Christ-centered personal growth. Protection, inspiration, leadership, showing kind of modeling the way. To me, my greatest, challenge is to model, I can tell my kids to sit down, but they may be sitting down on the outside, but they're standing up on the inside. And that'll come out later in my life. Our influence on our children is more important than the obedience of our children. Listen to that. My influence on my children is more important than the obedience of my children, because I can tell him to sit down. And he may sit down on the outside, Ned, but he's standing up on the inside.
That makes sense.
And that's going to show up later in life. My influence is more powerful than their obedience. Okay? And I think you have to have a goal, a vision of what you want, what you create success. I'll just give you mine real quick because I think it's important. Mine is having the affection and admiration of my wife, the obedience and love of my children, the pride of my parents, and the respect of my friends and colleagues. And
that's good.
that's true north for me. You got to know what the end result is that you want.
Yeah, and that really goes back to the thing you said a minute ago. I think more when we were talking about the marriage, you said, I'm going to take care of me for you.
For you.
And that goes in line with, I would rather, not that we're talking about rather, but I'm more concerned about my influence in my child's life than I am their obedience. Because if it's just their obedience, then that's really just outside of the cup thinking, right? It's just like, we look like the Joneses, but behind closed doors or in our heart, even worse, it's not real.
Come on.
And what do we want more than anything? Like, we want to be authentically known, but we can't do that for another human if we're not pursuing that for ourselves.
What's that saying? More is caught than is taught.
Yeah.
I mean, more is caught than is taught. They're watching.
Yeah, they're watching. There's so many directions I want to go with you, but I want to make sure to hit a few things that are going to be really important for this conversation. So first, just in like 60 seconds or less, what is it that you have done for a living to provide for the family?
So I've been in the insurance world. We do employee benefits for schools. So we're an employee benefit firm, and if you're a teacher, bus driver, cafeteria worker in schools all over the country, we manage employee benefits for you. I sold that company a couple of years ago. I still run it, but go ahead.
Yeah, so through those years, I know you got some your CFP, CLU. You've got some certifications or designations, if you will. You've learned a lot about money over the years, and now you're taking that knowledge of money and you're wanting to pour that into the next generation. Yeah, let's see it right there. So I ordered a book for each of my kiddos and told them to go follow your page. So talk to me about your passion here. What is it that you want to accomplish?
So God just landed in my heart when I was about 20, 21 years old, a love of studying what to do with money. I just fell in love with the study of money, and not money, but the study of it. And so I'm always talking to my kids about money, which most people don't do. And there's a reason why they don't, Ned. I can come back to that. There's a reason why. But I'm always talking to my kids about money. And several years ago, one of my middle sons said, Dad, you need to tell all of our friends this story. So I wrote this lesson down and did it locally, and it kind of went viral locally, whatever. And then I wrote the lesson and started going around to high schools, and it took off. And then my editor-publisher said, Dale, write this book. And it's called The Talk About Money, A Young Adult's Guide to the One Decision That Changes Everything. And so I wrote the book, and it went crazy. Fox Business and Fox and Friends and ABC and kind of all over the place. Now this has allowed me to go all over the country and speak to young adults and adults even about money. I'd say it's the most important life decision someone will make in their life, more important than who they choose to marry. That's a big statement. And here's why, because if we don't get money right, Ned, half of our marriages are gone. And many of the other half that make it aren't as great as they could be because the weight of money. Our hearts are attached to stuff. They're not attached to giving. They're attached to stuff. And money can tend to ruin a great life and a life of that's meant for so much more. And I just want to take the stress of money off the plate for most people. And this one decision can do that for young adults.
And what's that one decision?
I was wondering if you were going to ask that. So very quickly, think of back when you were 18, 22 years old and you got your first real job. And I wrote this book for 16 to 24-year-olds that have yet to get their first real job. Okay. That's why this is so big in high schools. But think back to when you got your first real job and these kids are going to go from making basically nothing to the most money they've ever seen in their life. When they get that first job paycheck, instead of taking and spending all 100% of it, stop and only spend 70% of it. Make 70% of that first job paycheck your 100%. Look, 70% of that first job paycheck is still going to be the most money you've ever seen in your life. You're at zero. Make 70 your
Yeah.
100. You don't have a standard of living established yet. And whatever number you accept as your standard, 70%, that becomes your reality. And in 2 months, you'll never know that 70 is not 100. It's just my 100. It's all I've ever known. And it'll sting for a couple of months. But it's just my 100. By the way, what do you do with the other 30%? The next 20%, you take it and you invest it. 10% is not enough. You invest 20% and give 10% away. Ned, I don't care who you give it away to. It's not important. Give it away. I'll come back to that point. Give it away. Make 70 your 100. And here's the most important thing in the whole book. Our young adults have one shot to make this happen. Because if you take 3 of those first job paychecks, spending all 100% of it, you will never back down to 70. It's over. You'll say you will. You will never back down to 70. And you will live life like most of America, which is broke, stressed, angry, and anxious because of the weight of money. And don't say, well, I'll earn more in the future and earn my way into 70%. Here's why you probably won't do that. Because most money problems, they're not problems about money. And I can prove that. They're not problems about money. So I show a $36,000 starting salary out of high school or college. Every kid in the auditorium can achieve that. That's a normal starting salary in America. And if you live on 70, you invest 20% and give 10% away. At retirement, you will have given away $437,000 given away and have $5.2 million on a $36,000 salary. Look at me. It doesn't care what kind of family history you came from. It's a principle, and principles don't care. I haven't said a thing about education level. It don't care what race, what faith, or what country you're from. Ned, money doesn't care. And social media has played our kids and said that you'll never have it, you can't do it, and the only way you can do it is to watch them, these people on these phones, do it. And I've studied them, and they're broke.
Yeah.
Anyone can be one of the wealthiest, most generous people in the world.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you, so one, love it. Can't wait for my kids to have it. I've taken them through like some of Dave Ramsey's courses and like anything. There's another great book that The Accounting Game is like a good kids and adult. I learned a lot from that book. But let me ask you this question. So a few minutes ago, we said, for the most part, kids, they're gonna do what their parents did, right? They're gonna not do what I say, they're gonna do what I did. Okay. So if right now I'm a dad, I got my kids, I'm living off of 105% of my paychecks.
Yep.
And I'm like, hey,
like
kids.
Most people.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, hey, kids, here's this book. I want you to live off of 70 because I didn't. How do I make that shift to also do it so that then my kid's going to do what I did, right? Versus me just saying, here's this book, change our life, change our family's like tendencies.
Do as I say, not as I do. Well, let's turn that around. Okay. So Ned, most every adult says 3 things when they hear this story. Where was this when I was 18?
Yeah.
Our parents never talked to us about money. I'll tell you why. And the third thing is, Dale, if I didn't start out on 70, what do I do now? Let me answer that question for you.
Okay.
But first of all, why do parents say they're never taught to us about money? Here's why. Because most of us didn't get it right, Ned. And so we'll talk to our kids about sex and money and ethics and jobs and careers and stuff like that. But when it comes to money, it's the Titanic effect. The worse the problem looks, the less you want to deal with it. So why would you go, no, you need to manage money right? Why would I? And they go, how did you do it, Dad? Well, I failed. Or you need to put it in the right places. Or where do you put it, Dad? It's all in the bank. Well, that's not where I need to. I know. So we just leave it alone. Mm-hmm. So here's what you do. And by the way, one of the greatest things a father can do is tell their kids, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. Or I failed. I didn't do this right. But let's get it right. Here's how you solve it. 2 things you have to do to solve it. If you didn't start out on 70, how do you solve it? And do it with your kids. Here's number 1. For the rest of your life, every new dollar coming into your house, Ned. Every raise you get, every bonus, every promotion, maybe a spouse gets a raise, right? Gets a new degree as a teacher and gets a step raise. Here you go. Every new dollar, every garage sale proceeds that you sell stuff in a garage sale. Watch this. Every car loan that you pay off, that's new money. Every new dollar coming into your house for the rest of your life, never take more than half of it. Never. For the rest of it. Ned, it's new money.
Yep.
You're not living on it right now. It's new money. It's the same principle as them getting that first job paycheck. This is new money for you. Every new dollar for the rest of your life. And get to some seasons, Kimberly and I did this. We got to some seasons where when I would get raises at my company, I would say, let's don't take any of it. This year, let's get to a season where this is a hard word, Ned, we're content. That's a hard word for Americans.
Yeah, it's a tough
let's
one.
get content for a season, maybe for a year or two. Don't take any of this raise. And if you keep doing that, you're living on less and less of your income. There's more margin in your life. And when there's more financial margin, Ned, problems land lighter. Your marriage magically gets better. Your kids magically act nicer. Your boss magically becomes a better boss. Just things tend to land lighter when you live inside financial margin. The second thing is every dollar that you save and invest, you have to get it working hard. And that's in stocks of great companies in the world through what are called mutual funds. And all of this is in the book and on my website to talk about money. Everything is here. Everything is here. I explain how to do all of this in mutual funds that invest in great companies of the world. Is the stock market risky? I prove that it is and it isn't. It depends on time. Everything is in the book.
Love it. Yeah. So dad's listening. Most of us are living on 105 to 110% of our income. It's just how most of America lives. And you know the stress it causes. Like you totally understand, as Dale's talking about this, the stress you feel or have felt. And so I encourage you, go order 2 of these books, one for you and one for your kid. Read it with them and then start to make the changes. And I do like your approach, Dale. Instead of like, well, sell all your stuff and buckle down and get a smaller house. It's like, let's do a little bit longer game. Any new dollar that comes in, still keep 50 of it for yourself, but then start to pay off the debt, start to save, start to do what you could have started doing at 70, and then let your kids be a part of it. I actually, just to run this by you, so we have a family meeting once a month, and I felt as though I wasn't a good saver. And so I let my kids know, Dad and Mom were working on saving. So every month I'd let them know this is how much we saved this month. And then anything that they were willing to save from their jobs, I matched them dollar for dollar.
Come on.
So it got a little out of control though, because like my kids had some babysitting jobs and clean our Airbnb and stuff. So they were actually putting up some good dollars. Like I was having to match, $750 or something a month, which was great. But that savings, they could only use it for 3 things: college, a car, or a business they want to start.
Nice.
So anyways,
brilliant.
Try to lean into those things.
Brilliant.
Any additional thoughts on the book and on what parents could do with and for their kids to help them set future success? And then I want to dig into another topic with you.
So when my, as an example, one of our sons started mowing the grass at 9.
Nice.
And so he became crazy about how well he did it. And because I was paying a lawn service, I don't know, $40 a week or something back then. And I go, I'd rather pay my son and teach him a lesson. I'd rather pay him that. And I remember one of my friends going, well, I can't do that because I don't want my grass to look bad. And it reminds me of something a famous football player said when his children were tearing up the yard, playing football in their yard. And his wife said, tell them to stop tearing up playing in the yard. They're tearing up our grass. And he said, we're raising kids, not grass. And so I remember my friends saying, I want my yard to look great. And I just remember thinking, I'd rather teach my kid a lesson than have a great yard. But it turned into be great. And I said, Grant, I was going to pay you $25, but I'm going to pay you $40 because of your attitude. Because the world rewards people for attitude. The world rewards people that want to do great work. And I showed him that that's just how the world works. when you do more than you're asked to do, you're going to get paid for more for what you do. And so, and then what he made, I would match it, whatever he saved, I would match it. And we would write down a little 401k, and we would write down, and we taught him things like that in his notebook. So keep doing things like that. Go through this book. It's 87 pages. Go through this with your kids. There's something in it for everybody.
Beautiful. So Dale, one of the questions that I ask my guests are about their dads. And typically what I ask is, what's something that your dad did that you appreciate? And then what's something that your dad did that you wish he would do differently? And the reason why I ask it is because even at 60 years old, you have an opinion of your father. And I think it's really important for us dads to know that now, because our children will have an opinion of the way we showed up. Now, before we even hit record, you held up your phone and you showed me this list of items. Talk to me about that, and talk to me about your father.
I'll go ahead and say I'm going to get emotional doing this. And we're riding from Atlanta through Georgia into South Georgia right now, going to Jacksonville, Florida. And so we're in the area where I grew up in South Georgia. And
hey, Dale, let me pause you for 1 second.
Okay.
Hey, Dale.
Yeah.
Hang on 1 second. It cut out quite a bit. Let me just see if our connection lines up again, just to make a note.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you perfect.
Okay. I can hear you good again. So, all right. So lean into, all right. So tell me about your dad.
So I'm going to get emotional doing this. And we're riding through from Atlanta through Georgia. We're in the south part of Georgia right now, headed down into Florida to go to Jacksonville. So I'm in the area where I grew up and my dad was from. So I'm going to get emotional talking about this. Let me just say this. I had incredible parents. I had incredible parents. They're both gone. And my father was a great man. If I could be 1/10 of what my father was, I would have lived an incredible life. So let me give an example of my dad. My dad was a school superintendent in the 60s and 70s and 80s. And he was a superintendent for many years. And the first job that my dad was a principal, and his longtime mentor, boss, superintendent, suddenly dies. And as a 34-year-old, my dad gets thrust into this leadership role as the superintendent in South Georgia school system. It was the first year of integration in South Georgia schools. And the first day as a 34-year-old, my dad walks to his high school, and there's state patrolmen lining the top steps of your high school for racial unrest. And my dad handled that day, and that year, and the next 21 years as a leader with amazing grace and character. And here's how I can prove that. I came behind my dad working in schools for insurance. And for 20 some odd years, I walked behind the wake of my father's character. And hundreds of people that I knew and met knew my father, and none of them ever said he was anything less than a great man. And one night, I was doing a presentation in the town that we just went through. And there was a finalist presentation, and the Board of Education is there. And the board chairman, I'm saying my father was a superintendent 20 miles away, and he stops me. And he says, "Is your dad Warren Alexander?" And I couldn't wait to say, "Yes, he is now." Because I knew the gift I was about to get. And he looked at everybody and he goes, "I know the boy's daddy. He's a great man. He must be a great man too." I couldn't wait for the gift of saying, "Yes, that's my father." Because I knew what I was about to receive. And the shoulders that the character that my dad carried 20 years before me led me through a career, or it could have shut my career down. And I had to worry about that. But I wrote this letter that I just showed you, what my dad taught me. And there's about 70 things on here of lessons
Wow.
my dad taught me. He was a great man. And he just, go ahead.
What are 3 things from that list? What are 3 things that when you think about your dad being a great man, the character, when you write down, my dad taught me 70 things, what are a top couple from there?
How to love the Lord, how to love your wife, how to love your family, how to hug your kids and tell them that you love them every day. You know, my dad, our house got shot for decisions he made about kids and not about race. It was shot. My mother hung up the phone crying for being cussed out like a dog. We lost friends. We got run out of towns because of decisions my dad made about kids and not about race. And I never knew those things were going on. My parents were at every event we ever had. My dad taught me so much about being a man. I told this story. We were doing a leadership group of young leaders in my church one night, Ned. And there was 11 young leaders, 30 years old, in this leadership group. Me and another older guy were leading this leadership development group. And one night, we all told our stories of our families. And these are future leaders that were in this leadership development group. Mm-hmm. And of the 11 young men there, 10 of the 11 had dysfunctional families. There was alcohol, drugs, sexual, mental abuse. Only one had a great family growing up. And when I told the story of my dad, 10 of the 11 guys were crying.
Yeah.
Ned, we're starving.
Yeah.
We're starving to have fathers that are great leaders of children. Our kids are starving. And the world is trying to make the father look like flaming idiots. And I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. But our children, these young men, when my children tell the story of their father, I hope that all the other men in the room are crying when they tell the story of their mom and me. I hope everybody else is crying.
Mm-hmm. That impact, that influence, right? That influence we talked about at the beginning. Is there anything that you wish your dad would have done differently?
Dad always regretted. He didn't think he did things well. He didn't think he was doing it well. We grew up in a small town. We just drove by about 2 miles from where I grew up. The field where I rode my dirt bikes in was all right there off the interstate. Nice. And Dad didn't think that he did it well. Dad always would tell us, I should have had y'all in the town that I grew up in had about 2,500 people in the town. Very rural Georgia. Mm-hmm. And, not a lot of, quote, opportunities or whatever. But, I grew up in a place where I could walk out in my backyard and go dove hunting, or I grew watermelons in the field beside me. I knew everybody in town. I played on all the sports teams. We just loved I learned what the socioeconomic strata of the world looks like and how to deal with people. And I wasn't in big towns to get in trouble and drugs and all that stuff. I grew up in a great small community in town. And my dad never realized he was killing it at bringing us up in a great place. And he said, I should have raised y'all in it. I go, Dad, are you kidding? This is an incredible place. And he just never, I don't think, had peace at that. And we would always, are you kidding, man? Look at what we got to do. He really did. But I think deep down, he kind of thought, I wish I'd had more opportunities. We had so many opportunities. That's probably the one thing. But everything else, how he taught us of money, how he taught us to loving his family, loving his kids, loving your job, doing it well, just teaching us lessons and how to drive trucks, how to shoot a gun. There's 100 things that taught us that. Anyways, every person's not perfect.
That's so
but
good.
I don't know. There ain't a lot of places he wasn't perfect. And I could be a tenth, Ned, a tenth. That's all I'm trying to do. A tenth of that guy. And I had a great father-in-law also, by the way. I was blessed with 2 great men in my life.
So good. Dale, in being a father yourself, what's something that you've learned through the process of being a father, right? You hit all the stages that you brought up. What's something you learned about you?
You know, Kimberly, my wife, is just so much better at me at, I kind of, I want to die on too many hills. Does that make sense? Well, they need to do this. They need to do this. They need, and you need to cull the number of hills you're willing to die on, because it's all not that important. There are big things that you just can't afford to miss. Their hearts. Where are their hearts? Where's their love of Jesus? To us, where's their love of Jesus? What's their heart like? Are they great people? And I tend to focus on career, job, grades. And Kimberly's so much more about that. She'll calm me down and our son was a big pro wakeboarder and always had long hair. And, at first it was like, he's got long hair. And she was like, don't worry about that. So less than the number of hills you're willing to die on. Don't die on all the hills. The hills just aren't that important.
That's really good.
They're not that important. And if you're going to die on many hills, you're going to lose. What's that saying? Lose the battle and win the war. Lose little battles, but win the war. The war is for your ultimate child's heart, so that when they are that consultant, Ned, they want to come back home. You hear me? After 18, they want to call you. Right? After the coaching period from the sidelines, because they have to listen to you from the sidelines. But once they leave and they're a consultant, they don't have to call you. Make it where they want to call you, where they want to hang around you. Right? And to do that, you can't die on all the hills. My wife doesn't die on all the hills. I want to die on all the hills. You don't die on all the hills.
Letting it go. Letting it go.
Yes. It's not that important. Much more things more important. Like for example, one of them is just very, very quickly is school. And I know a lot of people parents are fussing about school and grades. Let me say this about that. If you just saw the town we went through and the high school I went to, you'd probably call DFACS saying somebody needs to take their kids away from them based on where it's a very poor rural area, and I got a great education because my parents valued education. But let me say this about school. Kids don't have to excel in school to excel in what they choose to be. Yeah. Failure is relative. Walt Disney was a dropout. Yeah. And I'm not talking about a Bill Gates dropped out of Harvard. Walt Disney was a high school dropout. And kids, they may not excel in school because that's not their thing. Einstein said if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its life thinking it's an idiot. Maybe school's just not their thing. Kids don't have to excel in school to excel in what they choose to be. Yeah. Just give them the opportunities for where their natural bent wants to go, right? Don't drive something, maybe it's trade school or just not something that they've figured out yet, but have faith. It could be coming.
Yeah, it's so good. I think it's really, really important for dads to have a voice in their kids' education, their sons and their daughters, especially their sons. And I supplement my child's education with school with some things that I think are important for him. And sometimes he likes it and sometimes he doesn't. But I think too many of the times dads step out of that conversation. And you have a son or daughter that's half you. You know them. So helping them to discover their talents is important. So I love that. Dale, this podcast is Fatherhood Field Notes. You're opening up your field notes, sharing your life with us, sharing your wisdom and knowledge around finances and how to teach our kids. The mantra behind it is rebel and create. As men, we want to fight. We want to, be warriors. What's something that you are rebelling against culturally, society, family, anything, but not just to tear it down, you want to create something in its place. So what's something you want to rebel against or are rebelling against, and what do you want to create in its place?
So if you're listening to this, you can't see it. I'm holding up my phone. I'm wanting to rebel against what the world is trying to tell our kids that success is. Mm-hmm. And it's not things that you get. It's not things you buy. It's not things you wear. But it's more about what you're what you're doing, what you're giving with the gifts that you have. And so my rebelling, I've turned my career and my love that God, if you looked at the tangent points, the path of my life, and I showed you all that, I've been a CFP, my parents were educators. I've worked with schools. I've been a youth advisor at church for years, writer. All of these tangent points point to me writing a book to young adults about money and going across the country telling this story, because I think I can change a generation's saving and giving habits, because the world is telling them they will never be able to do it. They will never be able to have it. And the only way you can have it is to watch other people have it. And I'm just, quite frankly, I'm fed up with that. And on my watch, I don't want to allow that to happen. So I've said, whatever this takes, I'm all in. But that's kind of my rebelling, is to go out there and say, this is a lie. This is playing you. They know it's playing them, by the way. They just don't know the answer. And I want to walk in there and give them the answer. Beautiful.
Before I ask my final question, I have one question for you. We've looked at the past. We've looked at you being a son and you having children. I like to also look into the future. So you're about to be on this new journey, say the next 10, 15 years of being a grandfather is probably in the cards for you. So when you think about that, what type of grandfather do you want to be?
I've just always been the kind that when our kids wrote, what do you love about your parents? They, in elementary school, they would write, they love doing whatever we love doing. That's why skateboarding or surfing or biking or any sport, wakeboarding. I even competed wakeboarding because my son did. And I just want to be the kind that whatever they're doing, I want to be on the sidelines and maybe even on the field doing it with them. And, a very active grandparent, Lord willing.
Yes. Well, Lord willing, but also you've clearly taken care of yourself the last 30 years so that you could, best as your ability, position yourself to be physically fit so that you can still do a handstand on a skateboard and go outside and play.
That's right. It's a thin conference. There's not a lot of 6-year-olds doing that.
It's important. I love it. All right, here's my last question for you, Dale. It's a legacy question. So imagine, let's just say 30 years from now, right? 30 years from now, it's clearly coming to like your time on this earth, and you are in a cul-de-sac peering into the homes of your children. What is it that you would see that would put a smile on your face, a tear in your eye, knowing I showed up?
They're sitting around a table eating dinner together. It's that important.
Yeah.
It's that important.
Yeah.
And I mean, really sitting, eating together. It's that important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can imagine right now that there's dads listening, driving in the car, on a run, at the gym. They're listening and they're nodding their heads. And so my question to you would be, when was the last time you sat and had dinner as a family? And if now you're convicted to, it's been a couple days, then go make that happen. Like nothing else matters. Go make that happen.
Last week we were in Jacksonville with our kids at that home, and last week, and then the cousins are over, and we do this probably 2 or 3 nights a week. We're all together at our house, and when we're all down here. So even at 26, 24, 22, they always want to come over, and the cousins and sister-in-law and brother-in-law, and so we're always together collectively, and it's just rich times. But just to look in a house and see them sitting around the table together, there's a lot in that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Beautiful. Dale, where can people learn more about you, more about the book, more about your teachings?
2 places. The book is thetalkaboutmoney.com. thetalkaboutmoney.com, and everything is on there about the book. And then dalealexander.com has some of my speaking stuff. We'll be putting lessons up there, 10 Commandments of a Great Marriage, some other lesson, 5 Ways Not to Waste a Life. We'll be getting those loaded back up there. We just redid that site. So dalealexander.com and thetalkaboutmoney.com. Get that book for your young adults. It's a fast read. You can actually, on that website, you can actually watch the lesson. The book's got more, but you can watch the whole lesson online, like right now, thetalkaboutmoney.com. This has been so good, Ned. This is so good. Thank you so much for having me.
Love it. Dale, thank you for the man you are. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and knowledge with the world. And I look forward to seeing all the lives that you impact through your work and getting to know you more over the years.
Appreciate you, brother. Thank you, man.
Until next time. What an incredible conversation. I mean, the moment that Dale just got into the flow, obviously deeply passionate about fatherhood, loved hearing his connection with his own dad. And then him leaning into the most important decision our kids will make is about money, and really thinking about the own stress in my life, in your life, in the weight we put on ourselves. Like, if we were to focus in on something to teach our children, to teach them about money. And that's going to require you and I probably to learn a bit more, to lean into this, to step into setting our kids up for future success by doing the work ourselves, being open, honest, vulnerable with them. This is an area that we cannot neglect, teaching our kids and learning ourselves. Highly recommend go get the book and then listen to this dude's heart. Don't just get the book, go write a review, buy a couple books, share them with people. You're going to be helping future family, future legacy, and then also supporting an incredible, great cause, as you and I both know that so many people struggle in this area. Thank you to all you dads out there listening to Fatherhood Field Notes. If you find these conversations valuable, beneficial, please pause and do two things for me. One, write a review on whatever platform you're listening to this on. And two is share it. Send a text to somebody. Hey, dude, you're great with money and I think you would like this. Or, hey, this was a great conversation. You're a great dad. I think you would like this. We have to support each other in fatherhood. We cannot do it alone. All right. Thank you to all you dads out there listening to Fatherhood Field Notes podcast. What you do matters. Who you are matters. Do not be like everybody else. Be yourself. That is who your kids, spouse, and community needs. This is your guide, Ned Shout. Together, let's rebel against the view that fatherhood has little impact and create lives engaged in mastering the craft of fatherhood. I look forward to hanging out with you next time.